Yeah, I think if you are just open to learn new things and accept all the challenges, then I think uh, it keeps you growing and it helps you a lot in your development. So I think one should be open to all the challenges and learning in every step of your life.
Welcome to the Rethink Desi Reframe Series podcast, where we highlight the voices and experiences of change makers working towards social equity within the South Asian community. In each episode, we interview people who are leading the way in areas such as education, healthcare, social justice, art, and entrepreneurship. I'm Arpita Sharma, your host and co-founder of Rethink Desi, a project to unpack what it means to be South Asian locally and globally. In this interview with Dr. Preeti Kaushik, we will explore her educational background, professional challenges, and the lessons that she's learned along the way. I personally found her story very inspiring because of the way that she has been determined, resilient, and seized opportunities amongst many obstacles that have come in her pathway. We're going to particularly delve into the challenges of pursuing a PhD as an older adult in India, as well as trying to get jobs within the tech industry. Let's dive in. And today we have Dr. Preeti Kaushik here with us, who has completed her PhD in Nano and Micro Technology in Masaryk University in Brno, Czech Republic. She's also recently completed her postdoctoral research at the Czech Academy of Sciences in Prague. And she has just very, very recently moved to Norway, where she is figuring out her next steps. So it's very nice to have you here today with us.
Thank you, Arpita, for inviting me to this.
Yeah, so you had a very amazing career, and I wanted to start off by just asking you, what got you started on your journey, and can you share a little bit with us about what you have been doing, in your PhD as well as in your postdoctoral research as well?
First of all, I did all my basic education in India and basic education and also my master's in electronics from India. And then I started to work there in India itself in different engineering colleges. And then I decided to move to Czech Republic to pursue PhD. So basically I moved with my husband here. So first he got an opportunity to work in PhD, and then I moved along with him here, and then I also applied for PhD in different universities in Brno, and then luckily I got into Masaryk University. So I was basically working with Nano and Micro Technologies. So what I did in masters was electronics, and then in PhD I was working with Nano Micro Technologies. So it's a different field, but also it's like an interdisciplinary field, I would say, because it is a combination of different streams like physics, electronics, chemistry. So it was like after a long gap, like I did my master's almost like 15 years back, and then I started my PhD. So it was a long gap of studies, and so it was really challenging also at the beginning for me. So first few months, or I would say like 1 year, I felt like, okay, it's again like you have become a student and you're learning. But then, yes, also learning at every stage makes you grow also. So it was also a good thing. So I learned really very new things. I was working on new technology here. So after 5 years of finishing my PhD, then I joined as a postdoc in Prague. And then I started to work again on a very different field there also. I would say like it was related because I was working in nanotechnology, but also it was very different from what I worked in PhD. So they were different things. Yeah. So, yeah, but this was also really interesting.
Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the work that you did in your PhD and kind of what your research was around when you were doing your PhD?
So during my PhD, so I was working with the carbon nanomaterials basically. So nanomaterials are really like small materials which work on the nanoscale and also on the micro scale. So yeah, I was developing carbon nanotubes for basically gas sensing purpose. The main actually purpose of this was to sense different toxic gases like ammonia and hydrogen, nitrogen dioxide, which are present in the environment, which pollute the environment. So there is a need actually to detect these harmful toxic gases at a very low concentration so that we can prevent them from polluting the environment. So for detection of these toxic gases, I was preparing these materials. So preparation of these materials is itself a very tedious task. So it took like 2 years. I was just optimizing the processes to grow these structures, like the structures which could be useful for this particular application. The beginning 2 3 years were challenging because for me it was also a new topic which I involved on. It was like first studying a lot of literature about this, how it works and how the things go. So reading a lot of things, a lot of articles, and then working on this technology, we were able to develop these structures, modify them according to our need, and then use them for this particular application. Working on a nanoscale itself is a very different experience. Like I used to prepare these structures and then I used to do the imaging of these structures. And imaging is like electron microscopy I used to work with. So I don't know if you have sometimes seen these electron microscopy pictures, how they look like. So it's like very difficult to imagine what you look like physically something, and when you look at in a nanoscale or a micro scale, how the things look. So it's a wonderful experience, and that was really fascinating, like how things work at the nanoscale, how they look, and what we perceive when you see it physically. It made like really interesting somehow combine these nanotechnology and using them for real-time applications.
Yeah, definitely. And I could see even the value of a technology like this and its use in places like India where there are such high pollution levels, and being able
Yeah.
to detect the types of pollutants in the environment and then figure out how to address them. Um, but I would also love to know, kind of in your fellowship, what was your research focus, and what were you doing, because it was slightly different than what was in your PhD.
So postdoc was also based on nanotechnology I was working, but I was using a different set of materials, and then I was working for different applications also there. So like I worked with carbon nanotubes in my PhD, but in my postdoc, I started to work with a different carbon-based material only, but it's graphene. So it's nowadays called a wonder material, graphene, because it has this unique structure, and because of this structure, it can be used in different applications, different electronic, mechanical. I got a really good opportunity to work with this material, and now it is being used in all types of applications we can imagine. Of course, for environment, then for even for aerospace, for like all types of industries, it is being used. So yeah, so I started to work with graphene. If you see, graphite is actually a thick sheet of carbon, very thick, but when you like cut it into different layers, you go down to very very thin layers, and then you get to graphene. So graphene is really like graphene can be 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layer. So what I was working was on single layer, so it is a very thin sheet of carbon atoms. So I would say the thickness of this graphene is 0.7 nanometers. So it's really very small. You really
Like
need a
how?
very good electron microscope to get at the nanoscale. So yeah,
Okay,
it's a
so you
very
wouldn't
small.
even be able to see it without
No,
um
with your eyes, impossible. And also with an optical microscope, you can't see. You have to really need an electron microscope to look into that. So that's what I was telling you before, that when you look at these materials at a nanoscale, you see a completely different world. I mean, you can't even imagine what it could be, because when I used to look at those images, those electron micrographs, they look really wonderful. That's a really different world you will see.
so let me start by just asking you, you when you were growing up in India, and you were kind of figuring out your pathway of study or what you wanted to do, um, how did you make the decision, first, even initially, for your studies, that you wanted to do, you wanted to study technology, or you wanted to study engineering and in some capacity?
Okay. So, like in my time, I would say it was not so common, like everybody doing engineering or all this stuff. And when I finished my 12th, so after that, yeah, I was thinking what to do. And so it was like in my family, there was some cousins who did this electronics, who studied electronics, and they got really good jobs. And so then my father said, okay, then it's good. You should also go for electronics. So I said, okay, then, okay, I can try. So first, I thought of trying for some engineering. So for that, I had to pass some entrance exam also. I tried it, but I didn't pass. And so I decided to go for like simple BSc instead of like for BTech, you need to pass that exam. So yeah, then I got into BSc electronics. So I did BSc, and after that, I applied for entrance. So I applied actually for masters in maths and masters in electronics, and I got into electronics, good like score. Then I got into electronics. So it was more like influential from the people around you, what they did and how they were successful. After finishing my BSc, then I did MSc in electronics, the same. Yeah, so initially when I started, it was this, but in the beginning, I didn't get to know much the first year. But after that, I started to develop interest then. So yeah, it was interesting for me later, not at the beginning, I would say.
Yeah. So it, as a result of kind of doing the work, and learning more things about it, then you started to develop an interest in doing
Yes,
the
yes. Yeah, it was like this. Hmm.
what. So when you were in high school, were you interested in technology at all, or did you have other kind of interests or passions, or were you just kind of studying, and trying to just pass everything?
Yes, I would say during my high school, I didn't think much about like what I will do in future or what it will be. So it was like, okay, just I will pass and then we will see what to do. But yeah, so in my 12th, then because then you have to actually think about like what you have to do. So that was a time then start think like what to do, because then I had to decide like whether I should go for my arts, for commerce, or science subjects. So yeah, then I decided to go for science. Yeah, that was actually also my interest. Going for science was my interest. Yeah, so I had interest in science, so I opted for science after my 10th. But yeah, after 12, I was like clueless, so it was like more dependent on what they did, and then according to that, I decided what should I go for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in India, you did all your schooling in a private school, right? Or did you go to public schools?
Yeah, so it was a private school.
For me, I remember up until first grade, I was in a private Catholic school, and then I came to the U.S. So I'm not sure. Like, did you go to like an English medium Catholic school?
Yes, yes. I was also in Catholic school, so we say it like convent school in India. Yeah, so from fifth standard to my 10th standard, I was in convent school. So also this was like I changed like schools because my father used to get transferred every few years. So yeah, so before fifth, it was.
Can you tell us a little bit about like your father and mother and like what they did?
Yeah, so my father was actually working with the Indian Railways. So he was working as an engineer, and yeah, so he used to get transfer every 3 4 years. So we had to move like from one place to another. So I remember like the first place that I remember was when I was small. We were in Agra. So I think that time I wasn't even studying. But then after some time, we moved to Jhansi. And there, I don't remember exactly the number of years we stayed, maybe 2 years or something like this. And yeah, I was very small. Then in Jhansi also, I was studying in some Catholic school. And then we moved to a small place in Maharashtra. It was Badnera. So we used to study in Amravati. So these are two different towns. So we used to commute between Amravati and Badnera by train or by bus. So yeah, that I remember very nicely because I was in fifth standard when I moved there, or fourth, yeah. So yeah, so from fourth to 10th standard, we were there in that place. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and so you traveled a lot when you were younger, and then when you started getting to like middle school, high school, you were in the same area studying for long periods of time.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
and
Hmm.
then and then after you graduated, you got your MSc. And why did you decide to go into teaching after you finished your MSc rather than kind of going down the tech route? Can you share a little bit about?
Okay, yeah. So after finishing my master's, actually, I was more interested to work in some companies, and also I was trying after that to get into some company, but unfortunately I couldn't get into some. So I tried at a few places, yeah, but I didn't get into any. So then I got this opportunity from the college where I studied. So I was actually I did my bachelor's in Ambala, a town in Haryana in India. So I did my bachelor's there, and then I got a call from my teacher, and he told me that we have a position here. So if you are interested to join here, it's a like 1 year contractual position. So if you want, you can join. So because I didn't think of going into teaching. Uh, but then I got this opportunity, so I told him, okay. And at that time, I was on vacations. I remember we were in Shimla with family, and then I told him that, okay, I will just let you know when I return. So then I returned, thought about this because I was not at all interested to go into teaching, honestly. So then everybody told me, okay, you are getting this opportunity. My parents told me that, yeah, it's a good opportunity. So meanwhile, you can keep on trying in the companies if you want, but this is a good opportunity, so you should go. So I said, okay, then let's give it a try. So yeah, I joined there. And at the beginning, it was really difficult. I mean, because the students I was teaching were like, really, the age difference between me and them was not really big. I just did my master's, and they were like from BSc. I think, I got the final year student, so BSc third year. So just, I think, 1 or 2 years younger than me. So yeah, it was a different experience, and at the beginning I was really very nervous also to teach. I mean, also you have to prepare yourself every time when you have to go for a lecture. Definitely you should be completely prepared. So at the beginning it took time for me to get adjusted to that, and then yeah, so this is how I started my teaching journey after this opportunity.
So at first it was difficult. Did it become easier over time? What made you why continue down the teaching route for you?
Yes, so once I got into that, then I found it like interesting, okay. But it was like not even, I would say, in the first year, because that position I had for 1 year only. And still I was thinking like, okay, I don't know if I will stay in teaching for a long time. So I was still trying for some companies only. I didn't try for any teaching that time also after finishing that position. So I was still trying for some companies, but I didn't get into any actually. I got into some really small company in Noida for a few months, maybe 4 months or 5 months. But that was also not like which I liked, which I wanted to work with. So yeah, then I think for 1 year more, I stayed like without anything. So yeah, and then I got another teaching opportunity from the university where I did my master's. So I think it was in 2003. Yeah. So way back. So yeah, I got again call from there that we have a position here. It is also like a contractual position. So if you're interested, you can join. And I was like, okay, I don't have anything now to do, so it's better to go and join there. So I joined there. It was for 1 year. So yeah, then I started to again work there. So, and that time I was teaching master's students, but that was interesting actually that year. Yeah, I found like, yeah.
Um, okay, so it sounds like you struggled a lot after you graduated with your master's in terms of finding like the career that you were hoping for, where you were
Yeah.
able to get teaching opportunities, but you really struggled with being able to get a position within any sort of technology company that you were interested in.
Yeah, yeah.
And then,
Hmm.
so then what, at what point did you decide you wanted to do like a PhD? And kind of were you, because you were continuing to work and you were kind of struggling to be able to land any sort of job. And then, yeah, like what happened in between those periods and then you deciding you wanted to go down the PhD route?
So I actually did my PhD after a very long time because I got this job in 2004. Then I got married, did again MTech, and then started to work in engineering colleges. So my husband and me both were working there together in the same colleges. And then my husband actually was applying for PhD abroad somewhere. So he started to apply at a lot of different universities, and then he got here in Czech Republic. And then I moved along with him. So yeah, we left our jobs there in India and we moved here. I thought, okay, I will go. I will try for some job there. Meanwhile, he'll start his PhD. So he started, and then I started to apply for some positions there in Czech Republic. But the biggest problem I was facing was the language barrier because they have a different language, and most of the jobs were available in Czech language, so it was really difficult to find a position. So meanwhile, okay, yeah, that was also a thing. So then I started to apply for PhD positions there. So I thought it's better to go for some PhD than, yeah. So yeah, so after I think few months, I also got into a PhD position. I got this PhD and then I started to work there.
Was there anything that really helped you in terms of even like applying and getting into a PhD program that that you might like want to recommend to people for guidance, like who are seeking guidance on how to approach their own PhD journey?
Yeah, sure. So I would like to share my experience, and I think it should be generally common for all, like for a PhD applicant. So the procedure I would like to share, because if you're applying for a master's and a PhD, these are two different things. In master's, you directly apply for like some course and you get enrolled into it. But for PhD, it doesn't work this way. So for PhD, you have to first some person, some suitable according to your like, research, what you want to do. So just contact that particular professor in the university, and if they agree, then they will tell you to apply for officially for the position. So it works this way. So it's not like directly you can apply for a position. So first you have to contact a professor there, and then you can. Then it becomes like easy that you will be definitely enrolled there. So once the professor agrees. Way how it works if you want to go for a PhD. Yeah, but it's like you have to contact a lot of people. It's not like you apply, you write to one person or two persons and you will get a positive reply. So you have to keep a patience, just keep on applying. And yeah, sometime you will surely get a positive response.
Yeah. And so you had to really go through kind of multiple different processes in order to find your pathway. And it wasn't necessarily like exactly what you were expecting either, because I think you initially were hoping to be able to get into some tech industries, but as a result of the language barriers, you really struggled.
Yeah.
But then
Mhm.
you were able to find this alternate route in doing a PhD, and you were able to, through a lot of perseverance and effort, connect with some individuals who were actually doing research in line with your interests, and then be able to um, to to do the application and get into the PhD. Yeah. So it sounds like you. It sounds like you are really. While you struggled a lot, you were also extremely bright and intelligent, and you were able to kind of use whatever networks you had access to, and people recognized and saw in you really amazing qualities, and so they identified you as someone that would be great at teaching and have the ability to like push other students forward, um, and so like that university setting has been really has been a very great like a something that has really empowered and nurtured your ability to grow in terms of your work.
Yeah, I think if you are just open to learn new things and accept all the challenges, then I think it keeps you growing and it helps you a lot in your development. So I think one should be open to all the challenges and learning in every step of your life. It doesn't matter whether you are young or old, you should always keep on learning.
Yeah, and it especially for you because you traveled to another country, and you actually you had a lot of language barriers as well, because
Yeah.
in the Czech Republic, it's a very different language than English or Hindi. You probably speak multiple languages. So, how many
Yeah.
languages do you speak?
Then English, of course. And I know a little bit of Marathi also because I have spent a lot of time in Maharashtra, did my schooling there. So I can understand and little bit speak now Marathi. And I think I can understand little bit Punjabi also. Little bit. And yes, I can say now I know little bit basic of Czech language also, just some basics. I can't speak. And maybe now I will start to learn Norwegian. But language learning is challenging actually for a person like me. It's not so easy.
Yeah. Side note, I've been watching like these YouTube shorts, and I found someone who like hacked this. So he basically was like, if you practice 40 minutes a day, I guarantee you'll like know like a language in a year. And his strategy is you spend 10 minutes writing in that language, 10 minutes reading in that language, 10 minutes listening to that language, and 10 minutes speaking in that language every single day. And then in a year, you'll be able to you'll be fluent in that language.
I think so, yes, for sure. This way you can learn. And also, the best way to learn a language is to, like, if you learn at least little bit of basics, just start to communicate. Just start to communicate. So, if you start to communicate, you will for surely learn it quickly. That's I think, the quickest way to learn a language. But yeah, you should also have a big motivation also. Like for me, I always lacked that motivation, I think, and that's why I couldn't learn Czech language properly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So like getting a PhD after 35, what is that experience? Because you moved abroad to get your PhD, but I think the struggle for a lot of folks in India might be different.
yeah. So yeah, I think if you want to get into a PhD into a really good university in India after a certain age, I would say, like, especially after 35, it's really very difficult because it's highly competitive there to get into a good university. You should pass some entrance exam there, have a good rank, and then only you can get admission into that particular PhD course. Yeah, this is, I think, the biggest challenge if you want to pursue in India PhD after a certain age. But when I came here, okay, I had like few months, I would say 3-4 months of time, but it's not so big. So it was, I would say, not so difficult for me to get into a PhD in Czech Republic. It was way more easier. Although I didn't try in India, but I can say by looking into other people's experiences. Also, my husband was trying there in India after this age, so it was very difficult. He tried in IITs also, but yeah, it's IITs, I think, just out of question. So, but even getting into good state universities also is very difficult. So, yeah, I think in India it's a big challenge because of the population. But if you move abroad, it's definitely way much easier. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that might be helpful for folks to know if they're ever considering doing a PhD, or they're struggling with
Yeah.
the paths that they want to go down later in life.
Yeah. Because it was really, I would say, like a very good opportunity that I got here. So much of exposure I got. I was traveling around like Europe, and also I traveled to US for the conferences. So I really got good opportunities while this PhD for traveling. So very good exposure, I would say.
So having kind of just completed your postdoctoral fellowship or postdoctoral research in the Czech Republic, and now having just moved to Norway, how are you kind of processing this and thinking about what you want to do in the future?
So, yeah, also I would like to mention one more thing, just like you mentioned now, postdoctoral researcher or fellowship. So, I don't know, how do you take this as postdoctor? How do you take this? Like, is it like a degree, or how do you understand this postdoc?
So I work at a research center. So normally what happens for us is we hire postdoctoral fellows, and they basically come in and they're doing research that they have proposed. And we're like paying them for like their year of research. And then they will do presentations on it. And it's usually in line with work that we're doing. And so we will like then use their research for whatever work that we might be doing.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the correct thing. But I would say in India, most of the people think that this postdoc is again another degree. It's not. I have seen like so they have a confusion for this, that postdoc is again you are studying something there, but actually it's not so. So this is again a research what you are doing based on the project what you're working on. So there is a big difference. PhD, you are studying there something, you have to finish your thesis, complete your thesis, and then you get a degree. But in postdoc, you don't get a degree there, right? You are working on a project there. Either it could be your own project, or this is like funded by university, could be anything. So yeah, I just wanted to make it clear, because in India I hear like people saying, oh, you're studying postdoc. I said, not studying, it's not a study. So just wanted to say this about postdoc and PhD.
Yeah, that might be
Okay.
really helpful to know, because if most people aren't getting PhDs, then they don't really understand kind of how a
Yeah.
PhD or anything after a PhD works.
Yeah.
My personal experience has been with people I've talked to who've gotten their PhDs. Like the next step immediately after is usually doing a postdoc or looking for an assistant professorship position. And so, or they do the postdoc, they do one or two, and then they look for an assistant professor position. Is that your experience?
Yes, usually, like in Europe, it's like this. Like after a PhD, if you want to stay in the academics, people usually go for postdoc first. Like they will do for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. So, and then they try to find for some academic position, like some assistant professor or this. But yeah, for getting this assistant professor position here, it's not so easy. You should really have a very good research profile. So, and that's why getting these positions in Europe is very difficult for assistant professor. So, usually, what people do, they keep on doing postdoc because it's easy to get into a postdoc comparatively. So, they keep on doing for long years, like 5 years, 7 years. But the thing is, it's a very unstable job. There is instability. You don't know like for how long you will be here. It depends on like your project funding. So until the funding lasts, you will stay, and once it finishes, you have to leave. So it's a very sad part of science, I would say, research, and I think there should be something done about this, because after studying so much, you're spending like so many years, you are right, so spending so much of time, and still you are like you have a question mark, what to do after every few years. So this is a very sad part of this science. Yeah. and getting into some permanent position or tenure track position is very difficult. And that's why the other way is now what I'm thinking is like to switch to an industry. At least you will have a job stability and you have to not think about another job for next few years and this. So it's, yeah, better to go into some industry.
In Norway, are there still similar language issues, or do you feel like there may be more opportunities to do tech in Norway as compared to the Czech Republic?
So here, see, I haven't yet started to work here, so I'm still looking for a job. But what I see here and what my husband tells, like in his workplace, that people speak English. More people speak English. Most of the people know English here. And even in some offices, you go, government offices, everywhere people speak English. So at least I would say the language barrier here is less as compared to Czech Republic. And getting into a job here, so like I would like to go for industry first, and yeah, later if I don't get up with anything, then definitely I would also go for some researcher position like in postdoc or. But yeah, here I think because my profession is like I can work only in English language. Whatever I will do, research here is in the English language. So there are jobs available according to my profession. So I think I shouldn't face this language barrier at this point of time now here.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm excited to hear like what ends up happening next in your journey, and maybe we'll have you back for another episode in the future when you can tell us about it.
I would love to.
Yeah, but for folks who might be interested in asking you more questions about your journey or guidance on like applying to PhDs abroad and that process, how might they be able to connect with you?
Great, yeah, I would really love to help anyone who is interested. They can connect with me on LinkedIn or wherever any social media. So I would love to help them.
Thank you so much for being on today. And we hope to see you again in a future podcast.
Thank you, Arpita, for inviting me for this podcast. And it was really interesting to revive all my back memories. And yeah, good.
I'm glad. Thank you for joining me today for this conversation with Dr. Preeti Kaushik. If you learned anything from this conversation or are enjoying the podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is a wonderful zero-cost way to support us. Also, please subscribe to our podcast on both Spotify and Apple. And on both of them, you can leave us up to a 5-star review. If you have any questions you would like to ask me about the podcast or any guests you would like me to bring on in future episodes, please share them in the comments below or send me a DM on our Instagram channel, Rethink Desi. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful day, folks.